Is Jaylen Milroe the Alabama quarterback moving forward, or is it going to be someone else? We're going to get into that and a lot more. But Roll Tide, guys, thanks for being here. The original Bama Tailgate show host and Bama Tailgate on YouTube. I'm Mick Gillespie. Guys, like and subscribe, and thank you for being here. Let's talk some Alabama football right after this. All right, let's get into this. I guess the first thing that we got to talk about is Jaylen Milroe moving forward and, having a couple of days to evaluate what happened against Texas. And a lot of people have said, Mick, it's not just Jaylen Milroe. And honestly, that's the truth. And that's the thing that really scares me about where Alabama football is right now, because it's not just Jaylen Milroe. I mean, look, his dazed and confused look in the pocket and the fact that Texas could throw everyone at the line of scrimmage and basically challenge him to throw the football was a factor in the game. But the center couldn't get him the football with clean snaps, snap in and snap out. The offensive line didn't do a great job of blocking, particularly a couple of guys on there. Even Proctor was getting pushed in the backfield all day. But that's not the only thing. The times that Alabama did score touchdowns, they scored so fast that the defense never really got a chance to rest. But you know what? I mean, you got to give him some credit, Milroe. I mean, some of those deep balls were beautiful, and he's got touch on the deep ball. It's the mid-range stuff and the bad interceptions that I've talked about. And then some of you guys have said, well, what about the 2 touchdowns that got called back? I felt like both of those touchdowns were backyard touchdowns, which is a testament to how athletic Milroe is, where he's, able to run around and just throw the ball. One of them should have been interception, and it was like a tip pass that was caught. And then the other one was, where the offensive line was downfield. They didn't know he was going to be trying to throw the football. They figured he was going to run, which is what he did all game. And so what does that mean for Alabama at the quarterback spot? Well, Nick Saban said in his press conference that he thought about putting in a different quarterback. I thought the first drive of the second half would have been a really good time to see what Booker could do. And I don't know about Ty Simpson, but you know what? I mean, at some point in that football game, it would have been nice to just see what the other guys looked like. And a lot of people have said, well, what about 2015? That's the year that Alabama, with Jake Coker, eventually taking over as QB, and he wasn't the quarterback. He had to really prove to Lane Kiffin that he was capable of being the QB, and eventually he did that, and they won the national championship. Now, they did have Derrick Henry. Lane Kiffin is a dynamic play caller. That's something that I want to talk about comparing Steve Sarkisian to Tommy Rees later on in the show. But could that be this Alabama team? And I just don't see it. I don't feel like Alabama this year, the way that they've played, and then leading up to that, and you got to go back to last year, some of the games that they won, they played very undisciplined style of football. They made a bunch of mistakes and they got away with it. And then some of the games that they lost, they did the same thing, except they weren't able to win at the end. This was the first time that they've gotten a butt whooping like this since 2004, when Mike Shula was head coach against South Carolina and Steve Spurrier. I think it was Steve Spurrier. And then this is the first time that Nick Saban's took a lump like this since he was at LSU and they lost to Florida, but they went and won the national championship. So is Jaylen Milroe the quarterback moving forward? I think it still comes down to him and Tyler Booker. And we don't know what Booker can do because he didn't get into the game. So Saturday, I think it would be a really good idea to let him get in the game and see what he has, because the issue that I felt like was the biggest issue that Alabama had was Milroe, when he needed to basically get rid of the ball and move it downfield to mix it in with the handoffs so that you could use a play action fake. He just wasn't able to do it. He threw 2 really bad interceptions. And you've got to have that mid-level passing game. You got to be able to throw the outs. You got to be able to hit those quick passes to keep the defense honest, and he wasn't able to do that. So maybe Booker, who had a really good game against South Carolina at the end of the year, Maybe he comes in. And then the other part of this, too, that tells me that Alabama is not settled on Jaylen Milroe is, why would you bring in Tyler Booker in the first place? If you had Milroe and you knew Milroe was going to be your starting quarterback, and then you had Ty Simpson, 4 or 5-star recruit, then you had the other 2 guys that are freshmen, they're 4 and 5-star guys depending on what service. Why do you go and get Notre Dame's transfer and bring them in? Well, it's because your offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, wasn't comfortable with what he had, and there's a job opening if possible. And so they went with Milroe, and he did some things well, but he also really struggled reading defenses. And I think that, that Alabama moving forward better figure it out, because their season could be won or lost if the expectations are winning a championship here in the next couple weeks. They have another non-conference game against South Florida, and it's a game that Alabama should be able to line up and basically beat those guys up and get better. But I'm thinking that job is still really open, and we'll see Tyler Booker next. He'll be the next guy. Penalties and lack of discipline. This goes back to last year, and I kept thinking, well, these will be areas where Nick Saban and Alabama will improve substantially. Last year against Tennessee, I didn't like some of the officiating, but they did end up with 10 penalties in that game, and they lost, right? Every road game they had, Texas last year, Arkansas, all these games, they had a bunch of penalties, and they still, with Bryce Young, were able to overcome a lot of that. Bryce Young didn't have the receiver help that I thought Milroe got on Saturday, which was a breath of fresh air, where guys weren't dropping passes, which was a good thing. And despite all of the lack of discipline and penalties, jumping off sides and, false starts and, holds in the wrong spot, you know what I'm talking about, face masks, things that Alabama, when Nick Saban took over for Mike Shula, worked very hard to get rid of. Some of the bad things that we saw in the Shula era, he eliminated those. And then the other thing was 4. You played 4 quarters. You had the 4-quarter program. Georgia in the national championship game was the beginning of what we're seeing now, where Alabama's not dominant in the 4th quarter anymore. So now you got the penalties from the Mike Shula era, and you just got your tails whooped in the 4th quarter against Texas. That was like the national championship game. They weren't dominant in the 4th quarter last year in a lot of the games. And so it's hard to feel like this team is reminiscent of 2015. And that's what Coach Saban is hoping happens. And I hope it happens. I'll be honest with you. I'd love to be wrong here. I want to watch these next few weeks and go, okay, these guys got it figured out. But I just don't feel that. Here's why. It's because the body of work is telling me that it's going the wrong direction. And now Alabama's got to figure out how to get it moved in the right direction. So this is 2 seasons and a championship game the year before where things are going the wrong way. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's been around football for a long, long time. And he said to me, maybe Nick Saban and his demanding style of working coaches is pushing elite coordinators away. Well, let me tell you this. Watching Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, throw Mike Loxley in there as Alabama's offensive coordinators, but really Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin, and comparing it to what we're seeing with Tommy Rees, what we saw with Bill O'Brien last year, it's night and day. Sarkisian, every single play that they run is built to set up the next play. And this is a style of offense that was really developed at USC under Pete Carroll. Lane Kiffin got his education there. Sark got his education there. They were the best at doing it. And then when they came to Alabama, they brought that same style to Tuscaloosa. And these guys have gone on to get head coaching jobs. A lot of his coordinators have. Look around college football. The top programs, a lot of them are coached by former Nick Saban and Alabama coordinators, which means that the guys that you would have been developing to slide in are going to have to choose. They're going to choose between Alabama, where you have to coach for demanding Nick Saban, who can be hard to deal with sometimes, or you can go coach for, Steve Sarkisian, that's going to let you see your family on the weekends, and I get it. I mean, Nick Saban is a genius, and he is the best that's ever done it. And he's got this way of doing things. But the problem is you burn people out. It's something that we've known for years, except now there's just so many other options out there for some of these coaches that watching Tommy Rees, and I know it's only a second game, but go back and look at Steve Sarkisian's second game as offensive coordinator. And he was older, and I know he'd been a head coach twice, and he was more seasoned. But every single play on Saturday was setting up the defense for the next play, maybe something down the line. I didn't feel like that with Alabama. Very elementary. And my friend, who is a former NFL player, felt the same exact way. He's been around football his whole life. I said, hey, I just want to know, is this just me, or do you see this too? And it's like, no, I see it too. And I wonder if just having to work the way that they work at Alabama isn't scaring off some of the elite coordinators. And then you say, well, what about Kevin Steele? Well, I felt like the offense continuously put the defense in bad situations. The interceptions, obviously, but then the 3 and outs. Then when you do score, it's like a bomb, and it's not like you're driving down the field. And those drives, not only do they take a lot out of the opposing team's defense, they give your defense a chance to breathe. And Alabama's defense spent a lot of time on the field. And in the fourth quarter, they got freight trained by Texas in that final drive. And I feel like a big portion of that is because of the fact that they had to stay out there so long. And they have their own issues. I know the pass rush wasn't what we expected. And that's something that followed over from last year. I get all of that, but it's a lot easier to play defense when your offense is holding the ball, moving downfield, and that's not something that Alabama had. So I felt like the offense for Alabama definitely affected the defense. All right. How do you turn this thing around if you're Alabama? I think you got to find the right quarterback, and it may be one of the freshmen. But you got to find someone who can throw the football, that can read defenses, that isn't fixated on one guy, and let them basically operate your offense. But what we saw on Saturday is not going to work against good teams. They're going to watch his eyes. They're going to move the safeties over wherever he's looking. That's where the ball's going, and that's what we saw. Then those 2 interceptions on Saturday they weren't even. That was like amateur stuff. And I know it's supposed to be amateur sports, but we know better than that now. So I think you got to find the right quarterback. And the other thing is that Nick Saban's got to get back to being Nick Saban, this laid back, nice guy. I don't know. I thought that his demeanor, this laid back demeanor, was because he was confident. I was wrong. I think that this laid back demeanor is that this team has issues and he doesn't want them to panic. And we're seeing that right now. So get back to the basics. Get back to the fundamentals if I'm Alabama. Don't jump off sides. Tackle. Forget about all of the other stuff because you've got Tommy Rees now. He's going to have to learn on the job. But the offense can help the defense just by holding the football. And, we'll see what happens. All right. Something else I want to talk about. I need to educate some folks. And it's probably not you guys. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to understand what I'm going to say. I'm a graduate of Alabama, been around the program for a long time and was a fan before that, but was also a student. And when I was in school, Alabama stunk. Okay. They weren't that good. Now I got there at the end of the Gene Stallings era. And then went sweeping through, losing to Tennessee and Auburn and LSU. And I have absolutely appreciated every minute of the Nick Saban there. It's been amazing. And I remember the guys that were older than me, I'll call them the old timers, telling us about what it was like when Bear Bryant was head coach. And I always thought, wow, that must have been great. I mean, you just go and win all these games and play for championships. And, and then Nick Saban showed up. And I'll never forget that feeling I had in 2009 when I went to the Rose Bowl and we won it. And then we won it again. And I was there against LSU. And then we won it again against Notre Dame. And I was there. And just how cool that process was. Nick Saban has spoiled our fans. There's people that jumped on this thing and they don't know what it's like to have been through, losing to Auburn and losing to La Tech at Legion Field on the last play. And, the heartbreak of Iron Bowl after Iron Bowl, Tennessee playing Rocky Top 50 times, in a loss to them, and Jason Witten beating us up and down the field. But I'm going to tell you something, through all that losing, I never disrespected the people that come to town from the other schools, because when I got there, I was told at Alabama, we have respect for the people that show up. This is Alabama. We've done it all. We don't run out on the field and tear down goalposts. We're not rude and cuss at the other team or the other team's fans. And I know some people, they're fans of the team and they show up and they think that that's the behavior that you bring to Alabama. Well, let me tell you something. It's not. If you're going to act like that, go to Auburn. Go somewhere else. We don't want you. Watching the video on AL.com is disgusting. That's not us. And it's not because, you're talking smack and I'm offended. It's that you're an idiot. And that's not what we do at Alabama. And the way that you're supposed to act as an Alabama fan or an alumni or a walk-up alumni or whatever you are is, hey, we've been there. We've done that. Welcome to town. Hey, congratulations, Longhorns. You guys beat us. And we'll see you next time. Not cussing, not acting like a fool, because you and all the people that act like that embarrass me and the people that really represent the university. And I know a lot of you guys that are watching right now feel exactly the same way that I do. And sometimes it's hard to go sit in the stands because there's one or two morons that talk like that. And I've gotten to the age now where, I'm not going to be the one to walk over and say, hey, dude, you know what? That's not the Alabama way. I know you've never been in a class here before, but if you ever did go and you went through learning the fight song and learning the history that goes all the way back to Wallace Wade and Frank Thomas and what this university represents to the South and to college football, you know better than that, because that's not what we do. So I wanted to get that out there because I felt like we needed to talk about that today. I had to get that off my chest. And this is my show, and I can say whatever I want to, right? And this is your show, and you guys can tell me whatever you want to say. And I love the comments that you guys are throwing out. But let's keep it respectful, man. We don't always have to agree on football, and you can even be a fan of another team, but it's the same thing. It's a spirited debate with respect. And respect is something that we have always represented at the University of Alabama. I found that out when I showed up as a student at the university. I got the same talk I just gave you guys from someone else, and I learned from that. And I just hope that people will pass that on to someone that thinks they're going to, act like that to the visiting fans, even Auburn fans. We treat them with respect. All right, last thing I want to say is today's 9/11. And when I was at the University of Alabama, learning to respect the other team, I had one of the coolest things that ever happened to me in my life happen. And that's when this guy here, Thomas Walter Jackner, who I called Jake, everybody called him Jake, opened up a cheesesteak restaurant right across from the only gas station on the Strip. And it was called Fat Phillies. And he was a friend of mine, and I used to bartend with him, and this was his dream. He's from the Philly area. He wanted to have Philly cheesesteaks in Tuscaloosa. And anyway, They named one of the cheesesteaks after me. It's called the Gillespie. And of all the honors you could ever have, that's one of the top honors, to be a student at the university and have a cheesesteak named after you. The business was going great for Jake. And then on 9/11, I remember getting a call. Hey, dude, are you watching the news right now? And I had a late night back then. I was a student still in grad school. And he's like, come to Fat Phillies. And I went in there and I watched those people jump out of the World Trade Center. And it was a really, really tough day for our country. And it was a tough day for us. Well, Jake took it personally, closed down the cheesesteak place, joined the military, and went out there and helped track down some of the people that he thought and the government thought were part of the conspiracy that made that happen. And then eventually he was killed in action. And I wear this bracelet right here for him, and I named my son after him. So on 9/11, Roll Tide, my friend, and I remember the guys that were in the plane that was supposed to hit the White House. You know, they were talking on the phone, and when they went to attack the hijackers, somebody said, "Let's roll." And Jake took that as his slogan when he joined the military. So love to all of those people that defend our country every day. We're damn proud of you guys. Roll Tide. Hey, leave me your comments. Thank you for being here. This channel's taken off, and I got only you, the people that hang out on here, to thank. But keep the comments coming in. Keep sharing. Keep liking. Be part of this. Friday, we're going to be at the Floor Bama recording the Saturday radio show from 5 to 7. So if you're down my way in L.A., Lower Alabama, man, come by and say hi to us, and let's have a cold Yingling. Thanks for hanging out. Like and subscribe, and Roll Tide, everybody.